Did you know that inside of you, you have the recipes and the strategies to not only withstand adversity, but to in fact gain from it? If we look at something like your bones, for example, when we apply the adversarial pressure of impact from walking, the response from your bones is in fact to increase the density. When we look at your immune system and we apply the adversarial pressure of an infection from a virus, for example, its response is to actually increase your immune readiness. When we look at your muscles and you apply the adversarial pressure of physical strain from working out, for example, your muscle strength increases. Your muscles break down, they tear, they grow, your strength overall increases. And in fact, even when we look at your brain, my brain, anyone's brain, when we apply the pressure of cognitive load, of learning, we find that neural growth increases. And so all of these are these incredible responses to external pressures that are being put on these systems. And these pressures leave them better off than they found them. But what happens when we start to take these pressures away? Then, in fact, for example, when we're walking, the bone density decreases, really bringing about frailty. A decrease in adversarial pressure of things that compromise your immune system decreases the readiness that you have to fight another infection, generally resulting in far more chronic illness. When we decrease the amount of exercise and physical strain that our muscles actually get, we atrophy. When we decrease the amount of cognitive strain that we're being put under, we really start to engage and experience in cognitive decline. And without these things, with the absence of these pressures, these adversarial forces, these frictions, at best, us as a living system remains neutral, but more likely and more often it actually declines. And so what we can see here through this kind of mirror effect is that with the break and adapt response to these stresses, we are able to not only overcome this adversity in the moment, but in fact be better prepared for stresses like it in the future. And this concept is known as anti-fragile, coined by Nassim Nicholas Taleb. And he defines it in this way: some things benefit from shocks. They thrive and grow when exposed to volatility, randomness, disorder, and stresses. And they love adventure, risk, and uncertainty. Sounds a whole lot like entrepreneurs to me, to be honest. And yet, in spite of the ubiquity of this phenomenon, there is no word for the exact opposite of fragile. So let us call it anti-fragile. Anti-fragility is beyond resilience or robustness. The resilient resists shocks, but stays the same. The anti-fragile gets better. And this property is behind everything that has changed with time, and even our own existence as a species on this planet. This could be something as small as a single organism, like a plant, whose roots start to grow exponentially when the top of the plant is experiencing a lot of force from wind or from movement of animals, for example. This can happen at the ecosystem level, when forests are completely changing through time, through different stresses, through storms, through fires, whatever it is. And over time, that ecosystem is getting more diverse, more resilient, more regenerative, and ultimately more anti-fragile. And this even happens on the evolutionary scale, moving slowly but surely through DNA, through time, and really bringing things to where they are today. And so life, or nature, plays the infinite game. It turns adversity into advantage, it turns challenges into opportunities, and it turns small losses now into big picture wins later. So why is this important for biomimicry? Well, because biomimicry helps us to solve challenges, right? And solving challenges well requires understanding their context and their complexity. There's a whole lot of friction in there. But yeah, we tend to operate from a space that is very neatly devoid or even avoidant of friction. We lean heavily on heuristics, biases, stereotypes, patterns, and in fact, even partial information. Generally, anything that makes thinking and decision-making easier. And with the help of AI, this process happens even faster and even more subliminally. And I have to say that if you think AI is biased, just wait until you meet humans. Now, what happens when these very neat, untested so-called solutions hit reality? Well, as we know, they tend to not survive so well. They were never stress tested. They've never really considered anything from the outside world. But fortunately, we can take advice from the very mentor that we are trying to save, nature itself. And nature has been testing and ideating on how to solve for different functions over millennia, over billions of years. And it has arrived at the most incredible solutions for really understanding how to work with adversity and to turn it into something that can actually be a leverage point. I love this example because these seed pods all have the exact same function to protect and distribute genetic information, but the way that they do this is so different depending on the context, and each one has been adapted and is constantly adapting to this context. And in fact, the more I studied anti-fragility, the more I realized that biology has been doing this all along, and that the biomimicry life's principles are so well embedded in this whole idea of anti-fragility. And in fact, if we just take a look even at the Evolve to Survive section, and we understand that it's not only replicating strategies that work, but integrating the unexpected, where we incorporate mistakes in ways that can lead to new forms and functions, and reshuffling information, so exchanging and altering information to create new options. There are so many overlaps between this idea of anti-fragility and biology and biomimicry. Ultimately, we have this teacher, life on Earth, this living system that has been doing this, it has been doing anti-fragile for a very, very, very long time. And so it really is a bit of a homecoming for us to realize that we are part of this, and we can actually consciously emulate this and bring it in. So hang on a second. This article is Why We Must Break the World. Well, this one caught my attention. It's by Marcus Buehler. And for me, this was an incredibly interesting article because he's speaking here predominantly about algorithmic models and how to increase the sort of surface area for discovery of different proteins and syntheses and all the rest. But he really brought home a beautiful perspective that by integrating so many different sources of knowledge and randomness and chance and adversarial opportunities for improvement, that we really start to fundamentally change the way that we design things for the better. And another analogy that he used in this paper was fishing for truths on the left in the pond, or shaping new landscapes of ideas, insights, and principles. And his takeaway was that in order for us to build a new world, a different way of doing things, is that we must first be willing to break everything we think we know. To move from fishing from known truths to building the machine that shapes new landscapes of ideas, insights, and principles, we have to break the current world to build the next one. And that is the core idea behind anti-fragility. We're not replicating the same thing, but we are constantly adapting and improving. Now, the key idea that I would like to share here with you today is the idea of looking at our ideas, our challenges, our hypotheses through different lenses. Because when we do that, we reveal risks, we highlight opportunities, and we make new connections. There's a beautiful, beautiful company called Karnofsky, and they design these incredible artworks that are, the RGB colors and the red, green, blue colors. And when you look at them through different lenses, in fact, different pictures are revealed. They're all there, but we start to see things differently. And so this is how I perceive the world when speaking to other people, going, what are they actually seeing? We're getting this jumbled color, and this is what everybody is seeing through their own lens. This is kind of closer to the reality of things, but we all have our own perspective on it and our own things that we can bring to the party. And so in practice, when we start to integrate multiple perspectives, we're applying cross-disciplinary friction. And so this is really a call to sort of gently integrate adversarial views on things. We're applying multi-lens verification. And this basically means that we're kind of fact-checking from different perspectives. And it means that we are integrating transdisciplinary insights. So we're broadening the insight space and combinatorial possibility of what can actually be created and how it can be created by really seeking otherness in our processes. And I'm going to pause here for a moment just to say that I think this is one of my favorite things about working with the Learn Biomimicry team, is that we're forever critiquing each other's work. And it's just always bringing me so much joy to know that this is actually possible, because we all have our own expertise, but there's an opportunity to constantly be learning and integrating different insights and things that we may have missed. And so the benefits of an opposition or adversarial integrated approach are things like, first of all, detecting AI slop, because it creates a reality net. By really examining something through multiple lenses, we get closer to understanding what's going to work in reality or not. It increases the likelihood of real-world fitness for ideas. It sharpens our own thinking. It presents undiscovered opportunities. It reveals hidden risks, and of course, creates new discoveries. So reviewing an idea or hypothesis or a challenge through diverse perspectives or stresses allows us to create solutions that are not only resilient, but that are in fact anti-fragile. So let's bring this home, home to Learn Biomimicry, home to what we've been working on, and I'd like to share 3 aspects with you. The first is perspective, the second is cohorts, the third is empathy. First of all, the perspective, and of course this is kind of ingrained in who we are and what we do, and it's this biomimetic perspective that we've shifted from learning about something to learning from something. So it's understanding that we can quiet our cleverness. It's understanding that there are other forms of knowing, other forms of intelligence, and it's really understanding that there is so much to be gained by learning from something, and this extends outwards into learning from other humans. It means that we've got multidisciplinary cohorts. We've got educators, scientists. Hey, that guy looks familiar. We've got futurists, we've got architects, we've got account executives, we've got absolutely everybody. And this is why marketing is a nightmare, but it brings us so much joy when we actually have cohorts that have really, really mixed backgrounds, because the conversations are just on another level. We really get to all bring something to the party. And now, empathy interviews, the most loved and hated part of the entire 6-month mentor programs. I put this in there when I started writing the curriculum, and I was like, who doesn't love an empathy interview? And as it turns out, a lot of people. As a bit of an introvert, I'm like, I'm okay with this. It's just what I eat, sleep, and breathe. But apparently, doesn't fly. So much so that I started working in a new part of the curriculum, which says, why do we do this? Can I skip the step? No, you cannot skip the step. It's actually really, really important. And the number one reason we find for empathy interview avoidance is that there's this assumption that I already know enough. I know the problem, I know the solution, just let me at it. And while this is incredibly tempting, and it's absolutely everybody who experiences this, it's not enough. The second part of it is that we tend to have a spectrum of personality. So on one end of things, we might have extreme introverts who are going, oh, I just really cannot carry anybody else's baggage, so please don't make me do an interview. And on the other end, we've got people going, oh my gosh, what is that? Why do I have to deal with this now? And so there is a lot of friction here. There's a lot of resistance. But yet, at the end of every scoping phase, every first month, we hear so many versions of this exact sentiment. Wow, these interviews changed everything for me. They were so transformational. They were so valuable. And, you know, we just have to kind of quietly laugh every single time, but it's so true. And so what is happening here? Like, why were they so resisted and yet turning out to be so useful? And that transformation was that by deliberately integrating friction, by testing their ideas, their assumptions, our learners' ideas were not only stress tested, but they were improved. Our learners' understanding moved from a keyhole view to a multidimensional, context-relevant, anti-fragile perspective. So by actively seeking out otherness and questioning assumptions and biases, we started to truly and utterly improve these ideas. And so to bring this back, deliberately seeking friction that, in quotes, endangers our ideas, and our processes can help to provide the validation for this move. For example, through the Practitioner and Educator program, we can kind of say, oh, I'm just doing this for my project, don't mind me. And, you know, I encourage us to all kind of have this framework that supports us in this transition towards more empathy and more questioning and more friction. And perhaps we could just start with curiosity. So curiosity unlocks the power of not knowing, and it doesn't kind of have the strong medicine sting of empathy. So if you're not a Brené Brown fan, it's okay. You just go with curiosity, and that'll get you most of the way there. And given the corporate culture of rewarding knowledge, status, the single hero narrative, it is incredibly, incredibly difficult to have this mindset. And it's incredibly hard to replace the stance of I know with I wonder. And because that is a radical act of trust and humility. And I personally feel that if we can shift our lens to see ourselves as custodians and not owners of ideas, this will really help us to start to integrate these ideas of friction and these ideas of adversity, because it is not our identity that is under attack here, it's the idea. And we can start to think about it as well, is that, you know, like it takes a village to raise a child. We are really here as custodians raising an idea, and it's not ours to own. It's not ours, and it's not ourselves. And so this is a call for us to use our individual and collective genius. So by integrating the unexpected, the adversarial, the oppositional, you are stewarding this idea to become anti-fragile. And just a nod to say that I know that this confluence is landing at a time with enormous strain and enormous challenges. And so I would like to close out with saying that we have to be brave enough to share. We have to be vulnerable enough to be wrong. We have to be confident enough to keep adapting, and we have to be passionate enough to keep going. And as Nassim Taleb says, we have to have soul in the game. Thank you.